Today, I want to ask you all a very important question, and that is whether you feel like we can trust the Delta Force team, Team Jade, and believe everything they say. Well, recently, there have been a few goings on with Delta Force that have made me question that, from dodgy Steam reviews to them outright lying about skill-based matchmaking, at least as far as I can tell, and we'll get into that in the video, questionable ridiculously overpriced skins, and possibly even spoofing player numbers on Steam. I believe this is a very important subject to cover, not just for the consumer, but also for the industry as a whole, so make sure that you do stick around. But as always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, hit the like button, subscribe for more Delta Force and Battlefield 6, of course, later this year. I'll be all over that, and as always, thanks for your support. So when Delta Force initially released, the devs actually blew me away with how transparent they were with the community. They could be regularly seen interacting with people on Twitter, Discord, Reddit, etc., and they would even occasionally swing by one of my videos and leave a comment interacting with all of you guys there, putting your fears to rest and making you feel heard. In comparison, DICE and EA, I don't think they've ever left a comment on one of my videos or really interacted with me at all, so this felt like a breath of fresh air to me. Spin on just a couple of months though, and already there are several instances of the developers, I believe, being dishonest with the community and essentially just telling us what we want to hear instead of the cold hard truth. And the first big instance of this is skill-based matchmaking. So I for one am absolutely convinced that this exists in the game and that it is far more aggressive than they would have us believe. So this all started with Ricky Liao, the game designer, stating in an article with Video Gamer that, quote, "In our matchmaking system, you will find players always meeting with players that are stronger, weaker, or on a similar level. It's not going to be super wild experience because it's not everyone being in the same matchmaking pool, but we have several pools of similar skills here, but not drastically different." Since then, the game director, Shadow, has said on multiple occasions that there is no proper skill-based matchmaking in Delta Force, and they instead have one pool of players for beginners, and they've got one for everybody else, which clearly, if that were true, would represent a wide array of skill levels, right? Not only does he directly contradict his design director, but this is simply not how it plays out in reality. Now, the Cadwoman has done a fantastic video trying to debunk this facade by the developers to gaslight us into thinking that it simply doesn't exist. I'm sure most of you have seen it already, but if not, I will link it down below in the description. But long story short, she purposefully loses games and plays terribly to see if that would affect the lobby that she's placed in, and sure enough, once she began playing to her own skill level again, she absolutely dominated now, because now the SBMM system had bumped her down a few tiers. The fact that we have high pings in all servers is another huge indicator. The fact that queue times are abnormally high considering the amount of players in the game is as well, and this seems to correlate directly with the skill level of the individual, where those who are more highly skilled have longer queue times and worse pings. And then when it comes to my personal experience of playing the game, I can tell you almost without a shadow of a doubt that if I just had a great round, I placed high on the scoreboard, the next one will be terrible. I'm going to get absolutely destroyed. I might be somewhere around the middle of the scoreboard, if not towards the bottom. So not only do I think that SBMM is definitely in the game, I also think it's far more strict than we've been led to believe. Now, despite all of this evidence, they still won't acknowledge it. They refuse to change it because, according to them, it doesn't exist. They skirt around the issue whenever they're asked about it during Q&As and etc. And I think this is one of the major turnoffs for a lot of players and is resulting in a reclining player count. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? Maybe their definition of SBMM differs from ours, or it's all just getting lost in translation. However, it has also been recently discovered that they are actually giving the game fake positive reviews to boost the overall Steam score, which, by the way, I believe is against the Steam terms of service. That is to say, if you can prove it, and I guess I can't really conclusively do that, but it's pretty damn obvious that they are definitely review botting a lot of them. Again, the Cadwoman has another excellent video on this that I'll link below that goes a lot more in depth into this subject, but here's a screenshot from that video of some of the reviews. All of the accounts here are clearly throwaway. They have the exact same number of hours on record, and you can simply tell that these are not real people. This is not what people on the internet, and certainly not in Steam reviews, say. Now again, we could give them the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe somebody else is botting these reviews, but then why would they do that? The only people who benefit from this are Team Jade, the developers, and Tencent, the publisher. So it seems most likely to me, the only logical explanation is that it's one of them. So not only is making fake reviews dishonest, but it skews the public perception of the game abnormally, and it boosts the visibility of your game in Steam's algorithm, making it get advertised to more Steam users. Clearly, this is an incredibly shady business practice, and like I said, it's almost certainly against the Steam terms of service. And then that brings us to the skins. So I don't know if you recall, but Delta Force have said on multiple occasions before the game released that all of the skins would be grounded and rooted in realism, there wouldn't be any silly Nicki Minaj skins and all of that nonsense. But what's the first thing that I see when I log in to play the new season but this? Doesn't exactly scream rooted in realism, does it? So here, once again, it seems like they just told us what we wanted to hear, and then they threw away the rulebook out the window, and, you know, why not, right, when you're selling skins like this one that can cost you up to $300 in gambling fees. And finally, let's talk about the player count, because as somebody who has to sit in a queue for multiple minutes, gets frequently loaded into servers with high ping, and sometimes even placed in servers with barely any players, that doesn't really seem like the kind of behaviour that I expect from a game with a player base as healthy as Delta Force's. And I find it very hard to believe that the game has barely dropped any players at all since the day it released. This is almost unheard of. Generally speaking, when a game releases, it will hit its all-time peak shortly after release, and from there on out, it will slowly start to lose players as they naturally get bored of the game with the content of the game and they move on to other things. Delta Force doesn't really have that many maps in it. In fact, it only had 5 maps before Season 2 released, yet the player base has been incredibly consistent. Now yes, they did recently have Season 2 come out, but if we have a look at the graph here, where you would normally have a large spike of players coming back to check out the new content, it barely went up at all, and it actually continues to stay consistent. Now I know for a fact that there are tons of people who tried Delta Force and then have stopped playing the game. So unless those players are all getting replaced by new players at exactly the same rate as they're being lost, then could it be that those player numbers are being artificially fixed? Now, I don't have any proof of this, and maybe these are the real numbers that we're looking at, but I just find this a bit fishy. You know, we've already seen that they don't mind faking reviews, they're clearly lying to us about other aspects of the game like SBMM, so I honestly wouldn't put it past them to spoof player counts as well. The Steam player counts are, as far as I know, the only open-facing statistics for player numbers that you can see online. None of the other launchers have that sort of stuff, and those statistics really do matter. After all, nobody wants to play a dead game where you're going to have trouble matchmaking. If your numbers drop too low, content creators like me are going to make videos about it and then report on that, etc., and it snowballs from there. So, you know, it's certainly in their interest to keep player numbers as high as possible. Even Marvel Rivals, which is like the poster child of the internet right now, has current player numbers far below their all-time peak, which is to be expected. Delta Force hit 125,000 concurrent players just this last Sunday, which is only 6,000 less than the all-time peak. I just find that kind of strange. Now, regardless of whether that happens to be true or not, I suppose you could turn around right and say, Ghost, you know, you can't prove any of this, it's all speculation and conjecture, and you'd be 100% correct. But where there's smoke, there's fire. You know, once is an accident, twice a coincidence, but 3 times is a pattern, and this definitely looks like a pattern of red flags to me. Add all of that stuff to the obvious reality that they have copied large portions of Battlefield 2042, not to mention other games, and it's clear that they have no problem with putting their morals and principles aside to get what they want and ultimately succeed. And really the worst thing about this is that I like the game. I don't think it's going to replace Battlefield, and this is almost certainly a stopgap for most people until the next Battlefield game releases, but it is nonetheless a welcome distraction, and I've legitimately enjoyed my time with it. But a lot of this dodgy behaviour from them, it just makes it really hard for me to properly recommend it, and quite frankly, it doesn't surprise me one bit that people are worried about Chinese spyware being buried in the anti-cheat system, you know, if they're giving us plenty of reasons not to trust them. So, in conclusion here, I really think if they aren't already, they need to just tell the truth. They need to be more transparent with us and simply tell it like it is. Stop sugarcoating things. You know, if there's SBMM in the game, just give us the rundown on exactly how it works. And if the majority of the player base want it removed, well, maybe that is something to consider. But at the moment, the current narrative is just that, oh, you know, don't worry, it doesn't exist in the game. Like, come on, dude, we're not children. We know this kind of stuff, okay? We can feel it in the game. Anyway, what do you guys think about all of this? Maybe I'm just completely full of shit. I don't know if you think that. By all means, let me know down below as well. But am I the only one who has, like, a problem with this stuff? Or are some of you guys out there not playing the game due to these reasons? Thanks for watching.